those sliding door moments of what leads to what. You know, had I not joined the police, I wouldn't have joined the charity, and then that wouldn't have led to it. So yeah, I think it's you know, you can look back on it and you can see it with a silver lining.
Hey Kathryn, hey everybody, welcome to the How Change Changes You podcast. Super excited to be talking to the brilliant and wonderful Kathryn Forte today. How are you, Kathryn? So today we're going to be hearing Kathryn's change story. Loads of people who I've had on already, obviously many people have a multitude of change stories because there's only one constant in life, and that is change. But something that you wanted to share is really parts of your journey. And we were just talking earlier about the power of redirection and, you know, that wonderful area of being able to kind of reflect back on what led to what, and some plot twists and U-turns and all the good stuff. But before we dive into all of that, I would love you to share with the lovely people watching or listening what it is you do and where you live and all that kind of good stuff.
It's a really good question because I have kind of three aspects of my business. So my business is nutrition, fitness, and massage. And I always try and think of like a quick way of explaining this. And I guess I help people feel healthier and happier in themselves is the short, the note version. So the nutrition aspect is through Herbalife Nutrition, which I've been doing for 9 years now. 9 years just gone this month, actually. And that's changed my health and I suppose like mental health and personal growth massively along the journey. I joined that before I got made redundant, and then that's kind of like been a stable through my self-employed life. And as I'll probably share anyway, but the fitness element came from wanting to help some of my customers get fitter and healthier. So I started doing a group exercise or a boot camp. And then after getting made redundant, realized that I couldn't survive on what I was earning from that because it was a side hustle. It was a part-time income. So I retrained into doing sports massage and launched that 2016 in the summer. So however many years ago is that? 7 years. 7 years this August.
Yes, it will be.
Yeah, 7 years. So yes, that's what I do. I'm based in Sunderland, although I do have a couple of online boot campers, one in Portugal. And I've got a couple of customers, again, they're not in the Northeast, so I can support them virtually. With Herbalife, we're in 94 different countries, so it's amazing. So I have had customers over in Australia, which makes the follow-up and the customer support a little bit difficult with the time frame, but we work around that. And obviously massage needs to be face-to-face or face-to-back predominantly. So during lockdown, it was really hard to kind of manage that one online.
Yeah, yes. That makes total sense.
Yes. So I'm not from Sunderland. I was originally born in, I was born in Newcastle General Hospital, which is now pulled down. Lived in Prudder until I was 3.5, then moved to Southampton because of my dad's job. So I've got a bit of a southern and a northeast twang going on. Moved back to the north to Hexham, and then I moved to Sunderland for university in 97.
Beautiful. Thank you. So multi-passionate, multi-talented, and I have to say, as a person who has attended Kathryn's boot camps and been massaged by the healing hands, definitely recommend, and would follow up with, you know, you saying you make people feel healthier, fitter, and happier. I can totally attest to that. So it's just all of these areas that you bring in, and it's beautiful. It's a multifaceted offering. But it's all connected, right? It's holistic health.
It is, because, you know, for me, when you think about it, if you imagine like a Venn diagram of like each section overlapping, in the middle bit is when you get that equilibrium, that balance of not perfection, but you get a balance that works for you. you know, if you're into sports and fitness, you can't do that from an empty tank. So you have to look at the nutrition side of stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're struggling with your physical body in terms of aches and pains, again, that can be improved through the fitness, but it can also be improved by a simple thing of drinking more water. So, you know, all three of them are very closely interlinked. And I often get a customer that starts in one place and then may go to the other as well, which is lovely because it means that I end up building a really good rapport and trust with customers because they're not just coming to me for one service. There's, you know, there's multiple things, and a lot of the girls that come to my boot camp laugh and say, you've got the best business model in the world because you break us and then you fix us through the massage.
It's like cycle. I've not thought about it like that, but that's true. Yeah, I'm going to make your muscles really sore, but don't worry, because
I can fix
massage
it.
you. See, yeah, that's smart. That's smart. But it's true. It's being fueled, isn't it? And I know that when we were just talking earlier about going through any change, and the change story you're going to share very much talks about actually being able to fuel yourself and get some of the foundational elements of well-being and health and fitness there, so that when an unexpected change comes, which, let's face it, expect the unexpected. Yeah, exactly, right, you can kind of bounce back so much more quickly if you've got those foundational kind of health blocks in place, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's get kicking off with your change story. Can you just give a little bit of a scene setting of where we're beginning with your change story?
Okay, so this was really hard because I was like, I guess when you start reflecting back, you go, well, it wasn't really that much of a big deal. But when you start to delve down, you go, actually, yes, that kind of shifted my whole direction. So I've always been interested in, and I'll use health and social as the broadest aspect. When I was at Hexham, Queen Elizabeth High School, the sixth form there, I represented the county as a young person. So kind of putting young people's voices forward to the Northumberland County Council, but also Tynedale District, and was able to kind of support getting a youth club set up, which is continued in Hexham now. And as a result of that, I went on to do my basic counselling skills course at 18. So I was super interested in terms of, you know, how you can help yourself and also help others through the sort of the counselling skills, and, you know, learning the language, and active listening is a key thing to that as well. So I wanted to go on and do a degree in counselling at Durham University. But, and I guess still now, although I haven't checked, you have to be 21 before you join that. And I was, oh, why? Because you need life skills, you need life experience to become a counsellor. So I was like, wow, I've done loads, but you know, the rules are rules. So I was like, right, fair enough. I'll do a degree in health studies at Sunderland University. So obviously going off to uni at 18, qualify, graduate at 21, and then can go into Durham University. I'll have 3 years of university experience of life, moving away from home, which is full of experience, and then go on to do a degree in counselling, and down that route I go. However, in the second year, I said third year, but it wasn't, it was in the second year. In the second year, my grandma died, and it was quite a horrific experience. She was in a road traffic accident. And at the time I was with a not particularly nice person, shall we say. And there was a lot of stuff going on, and I just remember thinking at the time I was really struggling with my grandma. Actually, it was my granddad died. Sorry, my grandma died the following year. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm really struggling. I'm getting no support from my boyfriend. Definitely not my better half. And, you know, that whole thing about, do I really want to go on and listen to people's problems for the rest of my life? So I made a decision that I didn't want to go on and do the counselling degree then, and struggled through the university in this relationship. And when we split up, and finished my degree as well, I couldn't get a job in anything that was health related. The degree was absolutely brilliant. It had, so I did 2 years on nutrition. Ironically, I never thought I would use that, but you never know. We did 2 years on problematic drug and alcohol use. There was stuff around social psycho aspects of health. So looking at kind of the social model, the medical model and all this kind of, so it was, I loved it. It was so different. Each lesson was really interesting. But I didn't get a particular qualification in social work or health promotion or drug and alcohol worker. So when I was applying for jobs, I kept getting rejected. And this was the time, makes me sound really old, when you had to go and pick up the, what was it, the Chronicle on a Thursday.
Oh,
Yes, so between shifts working in a restaurant, I would get the Chronicle, I would circle all the jobs that I wanted. You would then ring up and ask for an application and they would post it out. The following day, I would do the Guardian, which was the the health and social ones. And then you would get this trail of job applications through the post. You'd open them up and you go, oh, I haven't got that qualification, or I can apply for this. I'd spend the weekend filling out. And this went on for, I think it was 9-10 months.
yeah.
And it was soul destroying. Said horrible person left me with a huge amount of debt, and I was having to work basically 6 nights, 4 mornings in a restaurant, trying to pay off the debt, trying to survive, trying to find a job. So it was not a particularly fun time. But what I did do was actually decide to join the police at this point. So I kept getting rejected on all of these job applications, and tried to join the police. And obviously, to be a police officer, there's a certain level of fitness involved. Now, I'm one of those people at school, one of those girls who always forgot her PE kit, forged her parents' signature to get out of doing games. Oh, I can't today, I've got period. Or just basically Skyped and went smoking cigarettes down with my friends. Now, knowing what I do now, people go,
yeah, that doesn't sound like you.
But that was me. I hated with a passion exercise of any sort, apart from basketball or trampolining. That was the only two. That was the only two things that I enjoyed doing. So when I wanted to join the police, obviously it was this realization that you have to be able to run a certain distance in a certain space. And they used to have this flexibility test in terms of being able to touch toes and all this kind of stuff. So I joined a women's only gym because I was very, very self-conscious. I was very unfit, and I was a couple of dress sizes bigger than what I am now, and didn't have an absolute Scooby-Doo of what to do. Spoke to a lovely girl who's a personal trainer at the time and just went, this is what I need to do. Help. Please help. So yeah, so I stopped eating takeaways as much. And I was, to be fair, because I didn't have a car, ex-boyfriend took it. I had to walk to and from work. So I was doing a lot of steps and obviously standing up in the restaurant as well. So from that point of view, it wasn't too bad. But anything else in terms of fitness was terrible.
Yeah.
So I started down this route, and thankfully, due to some of the customers in the restaurant, one of them was a sergeant and a custody sergeant. So I went to visit the cells and everything and seen how they did that. And another one was a civilian who operated the cameras. So I went to see that, and then they got me to go out in a panda car, which you can't do now with Northumbria Police, but at the time I did. So I'd spent all of this time and energy getting fitter, being able to run at the speed, sent in my application, and it was rejected because ex-boyfriend didn't pay. There's kind of a long convoluted story, but anyway, I had a car in my name because he was blacklisted and both surnames, and and he didn't pay for the car tax twice. So I had a civil offence, not even criminal, and they saw it as a pattern of behaviour, so I got rejected. So I was like, another change. which was interesting. And I think I said to you beforehand, I was so angry, because he'd left me with about 10 grand's worth of debt. I didn't have a car and I was paying the money off for the car. He was incredibly manipulative and, you know, emotional and all of that kind of stuff. And then here's me trying to find a way out of this situation, and it's like being blocked again. So it was a really awful time again. But you know, in these situations, you kind of you sit in a pity party, or you bounce back. And my bounce back was to keep going to the gym, because actually what I realized was that was a much better way of managing all of the stuff that was going on, and carried on working in the restaurant until I got a break with the charity, and the rest is history, I guess. I actually got a proper job.
I'd love that, you know, what comes up when you share that story and reflect on that is, you know, the passions that you had at the time. And I know, because you hadn't shared with me before about Hexham, like, and the high school, and actually even then early on you were proactive, and you saw that it's very community based, and fitness, like it was almost like the seeds were planted then. And then, you know, you go off and like look at other things, and then there was obviously a propulsion within you to help others. That's something that is blatantly within you. And it's so funny, isn't it, when you look back when you're a child, as to, or like when you're growing up, that, you know, in our minds, and I think it's still true-ish today, that it's almost like, well, I want to be a particular role, right? And it's all very quite blocked. Whereas it's interesting to me of what you shared at the very beginning of how multifaceted your offering is, and actually where those seeds were planted, and the fact that you were attracted to a degree that involved nutrition and, you know, health in certain ways, and then other areas that, and the way in which you obviously pulled back into the police again. So kind of, you know, and having a goal to actually kind of go, right, well, if I can't do it that way, then let's try that way. You know, it's the words I wrote down when you were sharing is this persistence, commitment, determination. And that's very much what I know of you today. So it's almost, that was your reps back then, sounds like.
Yeah, I think it's persistence, determination, downright stubborn, you know. It's kind of like, and I guess, you know, like I said, this guy kind of shit on me from a big height, excuse the language, and, you know, and then again, unbeknown, like to him this time, like in terms of not being able to get like a career, you know, that was, you know, police is a career. You join the police force for a career. So I think, you know, it's kind of, you either bounce back from that and you go, oh, I'm going to show him, although I've never seen him again in my entire life, thankfully. But it's kind of like, you don't want that to define where your story stops. Do you know what I mean? It's a huge barrier. Like, the road's been blocked. Let's create another one and go a different direction.
Yeah, because the question that comes up for me is, you know, especially with that relationship, because very early on, you obviously are helpful by nature, and, you know, when you're with somebody, you want to help them, right? What did you, just even now sitting here reflecting on that time, what did you learn about yourself through going through that period of entertaining that kind of behavior, and then the learning after?
I think we touched on it the other day, actually, that takers have no boundaries. So, you know, for me, I had no boundary in place, and he took all the time, you know, both physical, mental, and emotional, and then financial towards the end. You know, and it took me years to pay off the debt that he left me with. And, you know, probably had I approached the police back then, I might have been able to have done something about it, but I was that scared that I didn't, because of who he was and what he'd already previously done. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I just need to cut that and leave. You know, it's, you hear it a lot from anyone who's been through a domestic situation like that, and you know, there is a fine point where you either make that break or you don't, and that was it. That was the break. I was just like, can't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
I'll,
No,
you know,
totally.
I've got myself stupidly into this situation. I will
Yeah.
get myself out of it.
Yeah. But I think it's true, like to your point of so many females, I would say, I mean, not to generalize, but I'm gonna,
Yeah,
of actually, doing the nice girl thing and the caring thing and the supportive thing,
yeah,
and falling in love with potential and supporting somebody who, I've had similar experiences where you end up thinking, wow, yeah, I'm giving a lot. What am I actually,
hmm,
receiving here? So it sounds like really in a way that experience fueled you to kind of then, you know, go to where you got to with your career, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think, I think through some of my boot campers and my Herbalife customers and my massage clients as well, you know, I'm not qualified counselor. However, I do listen to all sorts of things. It's humbling when people trust you to share stuff. So I can empathize a lot with people, and I have done coaching qualifications, and I've got my NLP qualifications. So I do have a certain set of skills that I can fall back on, where I don't take on the responsibility, but I'm able to ask questions of them that hopefully can help them find the answers that they need themselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's the beautiful thing about having, areas that people can contact you through, because by default, even when you're exercising, like we said, that's a great way of just shifting things through you. And I know you mentioned earlier that when you actually are going through tough times in your life and that impacts your mental, emotional and physical health, that being able to physically process that and move your body is such an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And how wonderful that people then build up that trust with you so that they can, share that and not keep it locked inside. Because I think within all of this, and hence why this podcast exists, right? And I know your
Yeah.
podcast similarly exists, to normalize the fact that, look, nobody in this world has it perfectly worked out, and we all have things that we would maybe rather went differently.
Yeah.
But let's change the narrative. Let's look at it and reflect on it and kind of go, well, if that hadn't happened, then I wouldn't have gone all of these redirected scenic routes to get me where I am today.
Yeah.
So you said yourself then, after a lot of the job applications, and again the persistence, I mean 9-10 months of that, if nothing else, it sounded like you strengthened the determination muscle and the persistent muscle in that.
Well, yeah, and the fact that eating pasta at 11 o'clock at night is not good for any girl's hips when you're working in an Italian restaurant.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, I would have gone for the garlic bread as well.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So,
And I think like looking back as well now, because it was a career path that I'd wanted to go down with the police. And then when I worked at Home Group, in the last 4 or 5 years of Home Group, I was a regeneration manager, and I managed a neighbourhood management project in Deckham and Gateshead. And we had a 3-bedroom house on the estate as our office. And the front bedroom was converted into an office for myself and my 2 team members, and the back office was actually used for the neighbourhood police team. And the number of conversations I had with them at the time about the red tape and bureaucracy within the police, and I was just like, thank God I didn't join the police. But and this is the thing, isn't it? It's like those sliding door moments of what leads
yes.
to what. Had I not joined the police, I wouldn't have joined the charity, and then that wouldn't have led to it. So yeah, I think it's you can look back on it and you can see it with a silver lining, and that's the power of hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah. If you were to go back to her now and like whisper in Kathryn's ear of that time, what would you tell her?
Something better's coming. Don't worry about it.
It's so hard to trust that, though. It's funny. The Tuesday Live I literally did yesterday was all about rejection or redirection. And I think it is a perspective shift that I'm definitely practicing myself, because I think when we get attached to something happening, right? So you said yourself, you got to a point where, no, I really want to do that. Oh, no, I can't. I really want to do that. Oh, no, I can't. And you find a different way around. And I think it's interesting in reflection that actually all of these touch points gave you further information, but also actually, you know, I often think about that in the kind of old platform games. What's the game I'm thinking of with Ouija? Talking about Italian.
Super Mario.
Super Mario, yeah. You know, where you kind of go around and you jump up and collect the coins, and then you go around somewhere else. And it's like that's kind
Next
of
level.
game of life, I guess, that you kind of, you follow certain tracks, and you're speeding towards a perceived goal, but then life swipes you off. And you're like, what just happened? But then it is a muscle, I guess, and this is the power, right, of experience, isn't it? But also the power of reflection upon that experience to turn it from a memory into essentially wisdom.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think it's that thing of, you know, when we are in that middle of that change, and often we're so focused, I often think we're blinkered. So we're kind of, you know, horses that wear blinkers. For those of you not watching this on YouTube, I have got my hands either side of my face. So you're missing out on all of this other potential possibility because we're so focused on, no, I want and need this to happen. And I often, you know, joke with friends and certainly coaching clients about the possibility of what if there's something else out there that you haven't even yet perceived that's going to come into your field of vision if you just allow yourself to be open to notice it, right?
You're saying that, and I'm laughing because I'm going to show you, behind my laptop is my vision board.
There you go.
And my guidelines, the top 3 guidelines is say yes to new opportunities.
Yes.
Because you never know where that's going to go to. Might go to nowhere, but it could lead to anywhere.
But do you think that, for me, when you said that brought up, like, that's the juice of life. That's the excitement of, that's the juice of life. That's the excitement of not knowing where your next co-creation is going to come from and who it's going to involve.
Yeah.
So there's some excitement. So I think that's the switch, and it's perfect for the change story, and the fact that it can turn dread into wonder.
Yeah.
And the energy of that and the thought, you know, profile behind each of those perspectives is entire. I mean, it is the polar opposite, really.
Yeah.
So for you now, when you've reflected on your story and you've kind of gone back over, wow, there was a few redirections, there was a few changes and challenges. What for you what did it strengthen in you as a person, do you think?
I don't know. You didn't ask us about this before we came on.
I like to keep it fresh, you know, in the moment.
I don't know, because there was so many more different things that I was kind of like examples in terms of change. Again, in terms of that redirection. So I hadn't really sort of stopped to think on that one specifically for a long period of time. Because I think there's other key things as well, where the what leads to what. So for example, I went to Australia to meet a couple of friends, and ended up being on my own in Australia, and 14, 15 years ago. And I could have gone to stay with somebody I knew in Melbourne, or I could have stayed in Townsville and done some diving, which was my plan. And I ended up staying in Townsville. And I remember, again, the reflection side of stuff. I remember sitting on the beach because I was, and bearing in mind 15 years ago is when smartphones just started, but you still had to go onto a onto a what was it called? Cafe where you had the
Oh,
computers
like
to
an
do
internet cafe kind of
internet
thing.
cafe, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the smartphones weren't strong enough to update Facebook, so I had to go to an internet cafe, download my photographs off my phone to upload so my parents knew I was alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that time was, it's a bit clunky in terms of World Wide Web and everything, but I remember sitting on this beach and just kind of reflecting on the week of being in Australia on my own and kind of thinking I'll be all right. That everything I'd been through and I'd not long separated from a long-term relationship during my 20s. So this is my early 30s now. And just thinking, like I'll be all right. And actually deciding then that I wanted to continue with my dive education, my scuba diving. So I came back and then registered at Sunderland Scuba Centre and went on to become a dive master and assistant instructor and volunteered with them for many years. And that led me to Egypt. And then, so it's all of these things of like, if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't have done, and those sliding door moments are just like, they blow my mind sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I think, what did it teach me? I guess staying open is a big thing, staying open.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned probably early 30s was just to check in with my gut. If there's, because your gut has this sixth sense, doesn't it? It's like it knows if it's a good decision or not.
Yeah.
And if you've got anything going on that goes, maybe don't do that, maybe don't go there, maybe don't go on a date with them or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
probably going to be right. It's just probably going to be right. And if it doesn't like develop into a disaster straight away, it will. Do you know what I mean? So it's so every time I've made a decision, I've been open to opportunities, but I've always checked in first and gone, is there any chance I'm going to regret this? And I think that's something that I learned early 30s and I've kind of stuck with.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense, because when you were saying about actually being open to opportunities and to take, when something comes to you and you get that reaction from your gut often, which is that energy doesn't lie. If something excites us, we often physically feel it in our body and we get excited about it. So then it's that little message to kind of follow that impulse. And I wrote down when you said about, God, imagine had you not gone to Australia, you wouldn't then have potentially found scuba diving, gone on to do all of these other things. So it strikes me then that really the only failure is not putting yourself out there, is not saying yes to opportunity. It's to stay stuck in the safety of the known. But actually, there's so much exciting stuff in the unknown. It's, yes, it can be perceivably scary, but if we focus on, I wonder what it's going to bring. And again, it's that curiosity, isn't that? It's staying open, is that flexing the curiosity muscle.
Absolutely. And the cliche that the magic happens outside of the comfort zone, and it really does. And I think the smaller your comfort zone, really the smaller your life is. And it's a shame that people aren't able to take that tiny step and just push that boundary a little bit and just explore what's kind of on the other side. They don't have to stay there if you don't like it.
Well, yeah, exactly. But again, you can change it. It's the power to choose. It's choosing to kind of show that, hold on, I'm gonna put myself out there as an experiment. I kind of view it as experimentations now. Often when I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. But this is a practice though, isn't it? Like for you, when you think of more recently what comfort zones you've stepped out of into, What
Oh,
comes
if you want to
next?
go really recently, when I signed up to do a Strong Nation instructor course.
Oh yes, of course.
So, you know, I'd read this article about the founder, Ai Lee, in women's health and fitness. I think it was back in January. And I was like, oh my God, she's a proper badass. This sounds amazing. And I've got absolutely no coordination. I really struggle with choreography. My working memory is not great. So trying to remember what comes next was like, it was going to be a big challenge. And I signed up to do it. And, you know, 20 minutes into the first hour workout, I was tripping over my feet. I was using the wrong arm, the wrong leg. I was just thinking, oh my God, what have I done? I can't follow this, let alone teach it. By the end of the day, 3,000 calories later in the dining room, I'm now an instructor. So I think it's, you know, and the feedback that I've had well, I only started doing the classes last week, but the feedback I've had has been great. And physically, my legs are more toned in a week. And I'm like, I'll take that all day long. Thank you very much. So I can see and feel the difference in my body in a week and a half. And I know that the girls that have been doing them online and in person, they're already loving it as well. So if I'd stopped at that 20 minutes and just thought, I'm making an absolute tit of myself, I can't do this, I wouldn't be delivering something new and exciting and great to a whole host of people. You know, I had a message off Sue earlier, she's back in Portugal, and she did the class online this morning, which obviously when you're learning something like that from a choreography point of view, it's quite difficult. But she loved it, you know. So yes, if I hadn't have stepped out of that comfort zone.
Because what do you have to remind yourself? So in that moment when you were like, what have I done? Like, oh my God, like this doesn't feel comfortable at all, and you're questioning yourself. What for you do you then have to remind yourself?
So I've been in that same place a couple of years ago when I got a bike. So in 2019, I did a charity bike ride for Herbalife Nutrition. It's our charitable arm, and we work with Action for Children in the UK. Now, I used to ride a bike a lot when I lived in Southampton, moved up to Hexham, and I think I sold my mountain bike when I was 14. So this 2019, I would have been 39. So I hadn't rode a bike since I was 14. So 40, because it was, yes, I did my first marathon in 2019 as well. So I finished my marathon, bought a bike, and started riding. And it was a bit of a challenge because I haven't rode, so I was very nervous about, you know, riding on the road and everything. And we were encouraged to get out and ride with groups of people because we were going to be part of a big group cycling from London to Cologne. So 4 days of group riding, it's a lot. It was about 300 miles, I think. So I'd messaged a couple of people and, you know, found a couple of Facebook groups with cyclists and everything, and arranged to meet up and go for a bike ride on the Sunday morning. Rocked up next to Wearmouth Bridge, and everyone kind of turned up, and I was like, yes, I've just got the bike, I hope you're going to go slow. And they were like, oh no, we're the fast group. We're like, and I was just like, oh shit. Okay. And went off. My friend Stephen, who comes to my boot camp, he came with me. He's on a road bike and I'm on a hybrid bike. I'm the only person on a hybrid bike, which is a lot heavier than a road bike as well. And they kind of like shot off, give them the due. They kept waiting for me. We were heading over to Durham for breakfast at Wetherspoons, and I think about 15, well, I don't even know how many miles it was, and it felt like 50 miles, but it wasn't. I remember going along the road, and I was pushing as fast as I couldn't keep up with anyone. Steve was in front of me, and I had tears in my eyes at this point, thinking, what the hell have I done? I can't keep up with these people. I'm never going to be able to ride across 4 countries in 4 days. This is ridiculous. You stupid blah, 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 blah. All of those horrible negative things that we say to ourselves. And then I realized this is probably what people feel like when they first come to a class who've never exercised before. And I was like, wow, interesting. Really take myself out of it and go, right, okay, so, you know, someone who's never exercised for years before, or they, you know, for whatever reason, and they come to a class and they see everybody else who's like super fit and jumping about and having fun, and they're doing it in the right direction, they're using the right leg, the right arm, or whatever, they don't need to be corrected. And they're kind of like being that self-conscious and thinking, I shouldn't have come here, I'm useless, and all of that kind of stuff. So as an instructor, it's up to me to kind of go along and make sure that they're okay and encourage them and support them. And when we got to Wetherspoons, we got off the bike. You know, I'm still a little bit like, I don't know what I've done here. And Stephen said, because when you get to Wetherspoons, you have to go down the stairs to get to Durham, so you have to go down the stairs to get Wetherspoons. So we got off the bike, and I'm a little bit shaky because I've been riding, like blowing out my arse, basically trying to keep up with these people, because they would wait for me, and then as soon as I got there, I was like, stop for that, and then they would go again. I was like, oh my god, no. And then off again. So we got to the stairs, he got off the bike, and he was like, give me your bike to carry. And I went, no, I'll carry it myself, thank you very much. And he went, give me your bike. And I was like, oh, okay. And I picked his bike up, expecting it to be the same weight as mine. I was like, oh my god. And he was like, that's why you're struggling, that's why you're so far behind, not because you can't do it. And I was like, okay.
Oh
So
my.
he was there to give me that support and encouragement and take away all of that doubt that I had in my head. And after that, I enjoyed the bike ride and didn't beat myself up for being the last person and for holding everybody up as well. So from that, it was a really good experience, because I'm never the best at anything, but I'm rarely the last person. And to be the last and to be struggling was awful. I guess it took me back to sports when I hated sports, and I was the last doing the running on the track and everything like that. And I'm just like, oh. So it was a really, really good learning experience.
No, I love that, and thank you for sharing, because when you talked about that, it's actually again showing you that was a very humbling experience. And the fact that you were open enough and curious enough to go, this is really interesting, and see it through the lens of, like you say, as a trainer, and actually entering new people into an environment that maybe they've never been in before.
Yeah, because going into a gym in itself can be really intimidating.
Oh my god.
And when people go to the gym, they go, oh, they'll be looking at us. Generally not, because they're more,
really
more concerned about what they're looking like. You know what I mean? You think everyone else is looking at them. But when you come to an exercise class, when there's a group, it's a community, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So people have already formed those bonds and everything like that. So that can be really intimidating. And one of the things that I love is anyone who's ever come along to a class, is they've always said it's been welcoming and friendly. And I think that's something that I've worked so hard at ensuring that anybody who does come along is kind of welcomed in. And people who aren't that supportive don't stay.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, because it comes back to your love of community, which has been a theme across this whole conversation. Very, very early on, that you are very caring and mindful of creating this environment of inclusivity, and do it for the group of people. And I know you've done huge amounts of charitable work and set yourself these crazy challenges. But it's always about the greatest good. And I get the feeling, especially from what you've shared, Kathryn, is that does fuel you, because that nourishes and it seems like just makes you feel good. So it's that whole giving back, putting in to give back. I can see almost it is that cycle of how.
And in terms of the charity things, I think, you know, if you want to go and do a bike ride across 4 countries, it's great. And I would encourage it, because it is a fabulous way of experiencing different countries, and riding with a group of people over that length of time is a fab way of getting to know people. But if I'm doing a charity event, having a reason, an emotional attachment to it is the thing that always gets me out the door when I struggle. The first Great North Run that I ever did was to raise money for the Tiny Lives unit in Newcastle. My one of my best friends, her first son, arrested within a couple of days, and spent the first I think 7 days in total in the Tiny Lives unit, and it saved him. So registered to do the Great North Run and did that. And interestingly, a week beforehand, I actually ended up with a massive sprain on my ankle. And I would never encourage anyone to do this, now knowing what I know in terms of being a sports massage therapist. But I strapped it up and did it with a sprain, and ended up on crutches for 3 days afterwards. But I was so determined, because people had sponsored me, and the money was for the Tiny Lives unit, which had saved Henry. So it was like, there was no way I wasn't going to do it. So it's sheer stubbornness, I think, would be that one, rather than determination.
But but to your point, it is about, I mean, I wrote down that's the motivational meaning, which is the purposefulness of, actually, I've committed. And that's something I know of you as well, Kathryn, is that you're incredibly integrous. Like, when you commit to something, you follow through. Like, this is what I've always known of you. And I think it totally stands to reason then why you've developed that trust, because you model that behavior, because you actively demonstrate it in what you do. So it makes total sense. So, conscious of time, we could talk all day about charity. I mean, just on the charity things alone, we could probably talk all day. But just to kind of come full circle and bring it into that, I suppose, culmination of these journeys that you've been on, these redirections, these plot twists and scenic routes and all of that good stuff, the determination, the stubbornness, however you want to say it. How has all of that fed into how you show up today and what you're planning to do in the coming weeks, months, years?
Well, I'm doing another bike ride in September. And I'm going to Norway on my own in June to do a half marathon. That is just for fun, though, not charity. I think for me, what I've learned, and it's probably going back to the resilience and the tenacity, is and especially through lockdown as well, because lockdown for me was not easy. Finding a way and learning how to ask for help has been one of the probably biggest learning experiences in the last 2-3 years. I think the fear of rejection in asking people for help, which stems back from many years ago, has probably led me to struggle for so long. So starting to learn of it's actually okay to ask for help. And funnily enough, most people will help you when you ask for it, and it's because if people ask me for help, I'll go, yeah, no problem. And I don't even think about it. So it's like, why would somebody go, no, I'm not helping you? If you're in that, if you know who can help you and you ask them for help, 9 times, even probably 99 times out of 100, they're going to say yes. And if they can't, there'll be a reason for it. You know what I mean? And it won't be just because it's Kathryn Forte. It'll be because actually they've got too much on the plate, or somebody better could serve. Do you know what I mean? So I think for me going forward, like, I want to grow my business. I want to help more people, obviously, in terms of the community side of stuff. So it's looking at how can I do that, and working in collaboration with yourself, Christina, and other people who can, I suppose, support and enable me to achieve my goals from that point of view. And then What was the question? I'm going off.
Well, yeah, it was kind of a bit of a stacked one, to be fair, which is probably not
There
fair.
was lots of questions in that.
I know, right? But no, I think with what you've shared, it makes total sense. Which it's what I'm hearing is it's this commitment, resilience, tenacity has actually kind of, the momentum of that is built up to like all of this body of evidence that is undeniable of these themes, that it's now, because I often talk about when we are facing a change, you've got to outwork your self-doubt.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the beauties of reflecting back over your journey, to kind of go, actually, look at everything I've overcome, look at everything I've achieved, like look at everything that actually has felt amazing, and I've proved to myself again and again and again that I can rise to any challenge.
Yeah.
That actually it just keeps refueling you. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's you know, having a challenge has never stopped me. It might be a little bit of a setback, it might be a redirection, but I think you grow from any difficulty, don't you? And using that time to kind of reflect and always look for the learning. I've said that for many years. It might be a real shitstorm that you're going through, but there will be some learning in there as well. When you come out the other side, take some time and look for it. And I think, like I said, the stuff with lockdown was pretty awful, but I have learned a lot through that. And I do apply a lot of that now in terms of the business. And I guess also, from a personal point of view, I mean, we were joking earlier that I burnt myself out completely on Tuesday. It was a little bit ridiculous in terms of what I did exercise-wise. I didn't plan my day at all well. But again, having that real self-awareness of what do I need to be able to show up and be my best for my clients, for my customers, for my community. And if some of that is about taking that time out and allowing myself, or giving myself permission and allowing myself to do that. Because I think, when you get made redundant and you set up a business, people watch you, they don't watch you to fail, but they watch to see how you're going to do, how are you going to manage this. And, so I've always kind of felt like there's a judgment there, and you can't ever stop. You've got to keep going. You can't have a day off. You've got to do this. You've got to do this. But no, you don't. You really don't. You need to take time out and, and live a life. Life is too short to just work constantly. So, exactly. I'm really learning how to manage my energy and have that self-awareness of what I need, physically, emotionally, mentally, and then how I can then use that to fill my cup up even more, and then to deliver.
Yeah, because you're pouring it into people, aren't you? In the role that you're doing, you are. So you can't pour from an empty cup. So you've got to kind of listen to that signal to go, I think I might be running on empty. I need to stop and refill.
Yeah. So and I think it's people, it's sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's obviously now I'm 44, I'm coming into another big change cycle in terms of starting to probably enter perimenopause, and again being really self-aware of what skills do I have, thinking about the nutrition and the fitness and like the massage and all of that kind of stuff. How do I support myself through that? How do I increase my knowledge, my skills, my experience, my learning, to then be able to pay that forward as well? And it's really interesting. The more and more aware I'm becoming of what I'm putting into my body is enabling me to understand how I can then to deliver, because I do work very long days. And apart from Tuesday, I'm up at 5 o'clock every day, and I'm normally on the go to a greater extent until about 8 o'clock at night. And I manage that really well, considering what I do.
Absolutely. Well, it's back to making sure that you are fueled and rested so that you can sustain that, because otherwise you'd burn out. So for anyone that is thinking, oh, I want to learn more, I want to get in touch with Kathryn, how do people come and find you?
Facebook and Instagram at Kath4TE. Forte. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Kathryn Forte. If you're really interested in my boot camp, look up Weir Fit, which is WEAR, as in the river Weir. Weir Fit, which is on Instagram and so on as well. I do have a website, which is just my name, kathrynforte.com. However, it's not up to date. This is like one of those stress things that's just sitting on my shoulder, and I'm working on it, but it's not a priority, because my priority is,
but it's a way people, and it's a way people can come and contact you. But I think it still is a great platform to see what you do and what you offer. And then
Instagram's probably the best one in terms of like daily updates with stories and everything, and sharing that. So
perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and just having that reflection. I know a lot of people will just get so much out of it, and hopefully you enjoyed reflecting on it too.
I did. It's been like, now that I'm doing podcasts, it's really nice to actually sit back and enjoy the conversation, isn't it? It's lovely. So thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. Take care.